The VR, or Suomen Valtion Rautatiet, is Finland's government-owned national railway company. It operates all of the trains in and out of Finland, including a branch to Sweden on the Torino-Haparanda line and a track to Russia on the Viborg-St. Petersburg and Viborg-Moscow lines. While I was in Finland, I needed to travel cross-country, which meant taking one of these trains out of Helsinki, or Tikkurila to be exact, and heads to the east. The train I was taking was a class SR2 carrying a class Ido Ojaus-Vanu. The SR2 was built between 1995 and 2003 by Airtrans and Bombardier and were assembled in Finland by Transtech Oy. This particular train set was an electric double-decker train which runs on the majority of the long-distance journeys in Finland. There is also the much older, smaller and slower SM1 and SM2 units, but these only run on the stopping rural services, which serve each individual station all over Finland. When it comes to naming train classes, Finland follows a very particular two-letter naming structure, which was defined in October 1942. The first letter indicates the locomotive's intended usage, and can be one of 5 letters. H for henkilöjuna or passenger trains, P for paikallisjuna or local commuter trains, T for tavarajuna or freight trains, S for sekajuna or mixed passenger freight trains, and V for vaitso or switch shunters. The second small letter then stands for the weight of the locomotive. R is for raskas or heavy, V is for väliraskas or midweight, K is for kevyt or lightweight, M is for mechanical transmission, and that one is in English, and S is for sako or electric train. The number that follows is then the generation of the locomotive. That meant that the SR2 train I was on was a second generation mixed freight passenger train with the capabilities of carrying a heavy axle load. Track in Finland also used the rather broad 1524mm Russian gauge. This allows for trains to be much wider and spacious than your standard train in Europe, which is very noticeable when riding long distance, as at no point do you ever feel cramped inside one of these locomotives. This, however, I will cover in more detail in my Kehärata ring rail line and Helsinki commuter rail system video. En route, we stopped in Lahti and Kuovola, the latter having a large history with Finnish railway, which is notable when passing through the station with the old train yard that sits either side of the platforms and the old steam train that sits at the station entrance. The steam train is an old VR class TK3 which served in Finland between 1927 and 1953. The steam train, however, is affectionately known as the Pikku Jumbo or the Little Jumbo, and this is due to the great power output it had, as well as being the most common train type in Finland for many years, a number of which are still preserved and run on heritage lines to this day. Many parts of the line also run on a single track, with very few sidings in between. VR have timed their railways to allow many rural areas not to get congested by running only a single train on any part of the line at any given time when outside the Greater Helsinki region. This, however, means that you are waiting at some stations for up to 20 minutes before departing, while trains reach their next waypoint as such. This setup, however, means that trains in Finland very rarely run late, and accidents are also very rare, with only a single rail collision recorded in its entire history, when an InterCity train ran into the back of a freight train outside of Suonenjoki in 1998. That collision and a derailment in Jyväsylkä earlier in the year also led to the introduction of ATC on all Finnish locomotives, as well as a number of other safety systems which the Finns take a lot of pride in. To also help with the timetable scheduling, Finland also have only allowed for a single company to take care of the majority of the freight services, Fenniarail Oy. Established in 2009, Fenniarail works very closely with the government to ensure that all trains run as close to their schedule as possible, only taking over services in 2016 once everything had been prepared. Despite having a monopoly on Finnish freight, they run at a loss of 1.5 million euros a year due to the heavy limitations of their fleet and having long time frames between each contract they receive. Fenniarail, however, are soon expecting to take over all freight services across the Russian border, having signed an agreement with the UPM Kymmene Corporation, a wood products and paper mill company in Finland that exports lots to Russia. Passenger trains, however, do get priority on all Finnish lines, meaning it was common to see a freight train stationary waiting for you to pass before it could continue on its own journey. As well as the commuter and double-decker trains, VR also runs a sleeper service between Helsinki and Turku to Rovaniemi in Lapland. This is, however, a more recent service introduced in the 2000s, when a number of Class Edo carriages were converted into sleepers for long-distance non-stop services. These then replaced the much older blue carriages, classes Eit, Ipe and Ein, which had been on the line since the 1960s. This service runs only once a day, with 2 trains heading in both directions to both cities. For me, however, after 2.5 hours, I was now arriving at my destination, which started off a week of adventure in Finland.